My parents thought they were masterminds. For 6 years, they drained my grandfather's lifelong savings, locked him out of his own home, and dumped him on a worn-out couch in my tiny one-bedroom apartment. They told the rest of the family he was incompetent, senile, and broke. They treated him like a burden, waiting like vultures for the day he would pass away so they could claim his estate. But what my parents failed to realize was that Grandpa was a retired forensic accountant, and he had been tracking every single cent they stole. When he passed away peacefully last month, my parents showed up to the attorney's office, wearing designer clothes bought with his stolen money, ready to celebrate their inheritance. They expected a fortune. Instead, the reading of the will exposed 6 years of grand larceny and left them facing complete financial annihilation. Welcome back to BT Revenge Tales, where greed always gets what it deserves. Before we dive into today's story, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop a like if you believe justice should always be served. My name is Claire. I'm 28 years old, working 50 hours a week as an office manager just to keep my head above water in a cramped one-bedroom apartment. It was a rainy Tuesday evening when my quiet life was upended. I opened my front door to find my parents standing in the hallway, looking utterly annoyed. Between them was my 82-year-old grandfather, Arthur, looking exhausted, holding 2 black trash bags stuffed with his clothes. Without even stepping inside, my mother shoved Arthur forward into my small entryway. She spat out that they couldn't deal with him anymore. They claimed Grandpa had completely run out of money, ruined his own credit, and could no longer afford the mortgage on his home. My father added that he was becoming far too senile and difficult to manage, so it was time for me to step up and take my turn. Before I could even process what was happening, my parents turned around, walked down the corridor, and left their own father standing on my doormat like a piece of discarded trash. They thought they had dumped a broke, useless burden onto my shoulders. They had no idea they had just handed me the key to their downfall. I cleared off my small living room couch, made up a bed with my softest blankets, and brewed Grandpa a warm cup of tea. Expecting a confused, senile old man, I was stunned by how sharp his eyes were when he sat down across from me. "I'm not senile, Claire," Arthur said calmly, taking a slow sip. "And I'm certainly not broke." Over the next few hours, the horrifying truth came to light. Grandpa hadn't lost his savings. My parents had stolen them. 3 years ago, after my grandmother passed, they manipulated him into signing a power of attorney document under the guise of helping him manage his medical bills. Instead, they quietly transferred his house title into their names, liquidated his lifetime pension, and drained his bank accounts. When the money ran dry, they threw him out. What my parents forgot was that before retiring, Grandpa had spent 40 years working as a forensic accountant. He hadn't been helpless, he'd been patient. Tucked inside the lining of his coat was a worn leather notebook containing dates, account numbers, and exact dollar amounts of every single unauthorized transaction. "Help me call my attorney tomorrow," Grandpa whispered. "It's time to balance the ledger." Over the next 2 years, my apartment became a sanctuary of quiet determination. While Grandpa and I lived frugally, surviving on my modest salary, my parents were living like royalty. Every week, my mother posted photos on social media boasting about their lavish lifestyle. They completely remodeled Grandpa's former home with granite countertops, bought brand new luxury cars, and took expensive Caribbean cruises. Occasionally, my mother called me, never to check on how her aging father was doing, but to arrogantly remind me not to expect a dime when he passed, repeatedly claiming, "The old man lost every penny he ever had." I swallowed my rage and stayed quiet, following Grandpa's lead. Together, we worked closely with his trusted estate attorney, quietly assembling a bulletproof legal dossier from the hidden ledger. Grandpa never showed anger. He treated the betrayal like a financial puzzle that just needed solving. After 2 years of peaceful living in my home, Grandpa Arthur passed away quietly in his sleep at 84. I sat by his bedside, heartbroken over losing my best friend, but holding the envelope he had left on his nightstand with one final instruction: "It's time for the reading." 2 weeks after the funeral, the family convened at the high-rise law firm of Mr. Vance, Grandpa's longtime estate attorney. My parents strutted into the marble-floored waiting room, looking like they were attending a red carpet event. My mother was decked out in designer clothes and a gold necklace purchased with stolen money, while my father wore a tailored suit, practically glowing with arrogance. They genuinely believed this meeting was a mere formality, a brief stop before they could claim the remaining scraps of Arthur's estate and sell off his property for good. When my mother spotted me sitting alone in a plain black dress, she scoffed loudly. "I don't even know why you bothered showing up, Claire," she sneered, adjusting her silk scarf. "You were so naive, taking care of an old, penniless man for 2 whole years. You sacrificed your space and your youth for absolute nothing." My father chuckled, shaking his head with fake pity. "You should have listened to us, sweetheart. In the real world, charity doesn't pay." I didn't utter a single word. I just looked them in the eyes and smiled quietly as Mr. Vance opened his office door. We filed into the soundproofed conference room, taking our seats around a massive mahogany table. Mr. Vance closed the heavy doors, sat at the head, and placed a thick leather binder on the desk. My parents leaned forward, practically drooling. "Let's speed this along, Vance," my father said, tapping his Rolex. "We have a contractor meeting at 3 for the house." Mr. Vance adjusted his glasses, looking completely unfazed. "Before we review the primary estate, I must address the formal documentation left by Mr. Arthur Sterling." He cleared his throat and opened the binder. Contrary to popular belief, Arthur was far from insolvent. Outside of the home and pension you managed, Arthur held several private, untouchable offshore accounts, long-term bonds, and an undisclosed life insurance policy. His total liquid estate stands at exactly $1.8 million. My mother gasps, her hands flying to her mouth, her eyes gleaming with pure, unchecked greed. "1.8 million?" she whispered. "Correct," Mr. Vance replied, his voice chillingly cold. "However, accessing a single dollar of this estate comes with an explicit, legally binding condition dictated personally by your father." Mr. Vance leaned forward, his eyes locking onto my parents. Per Arthur's instructions, the entire $1.8 million estate, along with a full title to his primary residence, is bequeathed exclusively to his granddaughter, Claire. My mother shot out of her chair, her face turning bright red. "What? That's impossible. We are his children." She manipulated him. "Silence, Mrs. Sterling," Mr. Vance commanded, pulling out a second document. "There's more. Over the last 6 years, you mismanaged and transferred $450,000 from Arthur's private accounts using power of attorney. Arthur's final directive reclassifies every single cent of those funds as an unauthorized personal loan directly from his estate." My father went pale. "A loan?" "Precisely," Mr. Vance said, sliding a thick file across the table, complete with an itemized forensic audit of every transaction. "The estate demands full repayment of the $450,000 within 30 days. If you fail to comply, I have explicit orders to file immediate charges for grand larceny, elder financial abuse, and corporate fraud." My parents stood frozen, their smug arrogance instantly shattering into utter terror as the reality of complete financial ruin crashed down upon them. The panic in that room was absolute. Unable to produce $450,000 in 30 days, my parents were forced to put the newly renovated house up for immediate sale, liquidating their luxury cars and draining their investments just to avoid a federal prison sentence. When the dust settled, they were completely broke, living in a tiny, run-down apartment, the exact kind of place they had tried to lock Grandpa into. My mother called me dozens of times, sobbing, begging me to use my inheritance to save them. I listened to her breakdown silently, then reminded her of her own words. In the real world, charity doesn't pay. I hung up and blocked their numbers forever. I used my inheritance to purchase a beautiful home with a big garden, filling it with framed photos of Grandpa Arthur. He didn't just leave me a fortune. He taught me the ultimate lesson in patience, dignity, and quiet justice. They thought they could steal an old man's life, but in the end, his ledger balanced perfectly.